Thank you,
Thank
Jonty,
you.
to a fantastic start, and just a reminder of how old I am and having lived through that journey of print through to those first online things. What an incredible journey. Thank you, panelists, for joining us for this debate on uncertainty as opportunity, which very much follows on from what we've just heard. Product teams in a time of flux. A very interesting title for this debate. So why is there uncertainty? And what is causing it? Frances, can I start with you and work towards myself?
Yeah, I think a lot of the uncertainty comes from the fact that previously, if you look at what investors or the board was asking us to do was grow at all costs. And in that environment, that required a different organization, different muscles, different expectations. But now with post-pandemic and the economic environment, we're asked to grow efficiently. And with that, it's how do we do that effectively? Product is the kind of silver bullet that a lot think will enable them to do that. But I think there's still a lot of misunderstanding about what product truly means and going to a product model truly means. There's misunderstanding about what a product manager role is, a product organization is, and how that works. And the level of real transformation that's needed in order to change from a project type environment to a product type environment. From my experience, I've seen organizations that really want to do it, but they don't have necessarily the experience or the appetite to take that transformational change along with the demands of we want results now and the outputs that they're expecting or they're used to. So I think that's a lot of the challenges that are faced at the moment.
Yeah, I think from my side, to what Jonty was saying before, he showed us the Uber, Airbnb, Google, Meta, etc. of this world. And that's kind of the model that we're all looking at. I don't live in that world. I don't know about you. I don't live in the world where it's very clear that what product managers do, what product designers do, what product marketers do for that matter. We don't know how to organize a product organization and be as successful in that way. I think that's the main issue that the uncertainty is bringing is we haven't figured it out yet. They seem to have, but what we see from the external might not be exactly the reality. We believe they've figured it out. We haven't figured it out yet. And then we've got this that we're going to talk about as well, is we've got AI coming and it's disrupting everything. It seems to be changing the world. So that uncertainty is coming from we haven't figured out really what's a product manager or what's a product designer or how it fits into the organization. And then suddenly we have to figure out how do we do artificial intelligence and faster product and better product and actually have all of this become invisible. It's crazy.
Yeah, from my side, I guess I echo a lot of, for me, it's the economic situation that's caused it. I think in particular, for me, I can't help but go to targets that were set prior to the economic downturn, all the things that have happened to cause that, whether or not targets were reset accordingly. So if the business wasn't willing to reduce those targets, then something had to give inevitably. So that might have surfaced itself in terms of cuts in teams, new processes, or just doing the same, having to do a lot more essentially. So I guess there have been some upsides to that occasionally, because who's to say every organization doesn't have some fat to trim, as it were. So I wouldn't say it's blanket negative. I think it's challenging, but there's definitely been, that's why essentially there's questions are being raised as to, well, actually, can we still do this with what we have? That's been my perspective of it.
Yeah, I think another interesting part, building on what Ben just mentioned, ultimately, we need more focus. And I think that is the challenge that you see across organizations. So it's typically, how do we still do the same with less, rather than actually asking the question, what is the objective? What are we trying to achieve and why and for who? So when I talk to my product managers that might come to me and say, hey, I want to work on X, Y, and Z, a lot of my conversation is, play back the story. Tell me the data story. Tell me the insights and tell me why you're choosing this over this. And that's what I'll do at the level with my product managers. But I think sometimes at the leadership level, there's still a desire and demand for, we need to be doing everything and find a way to do everything, which isn't really realistic. So my advice in that scenario is really going back to, can we align on the problems we're solving and why and for who? Can we align on like what success looks like and how we're going to measure that success, so that ultimately we can go back and say, did we achieve the outcomes we needed, versus the old kind of viewpoint, which was very much around output. Like, we've delivered lots of things, but I always ask the question, but did that enable us to achieve the business goals? And I think that's the efficiency, that's the side of efficiency that people haven't yet got their head around, that it does mean radical focus, and it does mean being a lot more intentional about the objectives we set and making them more quantifiable.
So two of you have mentioned sort of having to do more with less. Is that therefore a challenge for CPOs, that they're having to roll up their sleeves more and spend a little less time leading and a bit more doing, because they're having to, the department has to do more with less?
Yeah, I think it's in a way, for me, at least in product management or product design, it's kind of always been we have to wear so many hats all the time, and we have to wear even more hats. So that's please keep on going more, giving us more and deliver more and have more. And it's like, but, to your point, less people, or, there's an environment out there that just, kind of doesn't understand what you're doing, and therefore going, surely you can do all of those things. I think we'll get to talk about it, but lately I've taken product operation, and it's really it's new, right? No one really knows what product operation is and what it does. Anyone interested, there's a few books that are absolutely amazing on this, but it's like, okay, product manager are being asked to do everything. You're being asked to understand the data, the KPIs, the problem that the market has, and the business and the economy, and the features and all of this together. It's not possible, right? It's not. So how does product operation come and help, provide that information to product managers so they can actually just really focus on their job and not having to wear so many hats all the time? And that's the problem, is that, Jonty went through some of the history. For me, it was like we had a feature team and an ergonomy team, and the feature team would figure out the functionality, and that's it. That was it. Now it's like the product manager, as we went, started having more and more and more given to them. And now I think is the time where we're starting to remove that. But it doesn't have to be a bad thing. We just need to have other processes that allows for those elements to come to them without the work.
I think picking up on the word that Francis used around focus, in theory there is a healthy level of focus, and the question is, how do you know if you're getting that right? Focus, and indeed the right combination of people's skill sets, probably changes from team to team, initiative to initiative, but I guess for me I look to naturally, is the company performance reflecting, have you got the balance right? Are you achieving what you used to achieve, obviously subject to the wider environment? For me, it's often just like what the users are saying. So in theory, maybe you'll still protect your primary initiatives, but there will be a tell there somewhere if you've not got that quite right. So, it might be that your BAU looking after your product, the small things that, that have been existing for a while and your users keep telling you, is the quality of how you execute on them reducing, for example. There will be a tell somewhere. It might be your customers that have noticed that your quality is reduced. And for me, it all boils down to your point around just, have you got that level of focus right? Because ultimately, if you haven't, you will feel it in terms of, possibly even in terms of stress and mental health. Quality of decision-making reduces if you put people under too much pressure. So again, not a blanket statement. I've seen positives as well come from this. So we've moved to a way of operating using ShapeUp, which does a number of things. It empowers engineers to think more about how lean they're being, for example. It empowers us all to think about whether or not we're working on the most important thing. And it also, this is reduced because we had a reduced delivery function. So it also leads to, focus on changing up team shapes according to the opportunities that are sitting before us. So I definitely have seen positives as well, but I've also seen some of the negatives where the pressure's not quite right. There's that lack of focus. You're spread across too many things, and ultimately the customer feedback and business performance starts to tell. I think those are the things you need to see.
Francis, anything you'd add?
I think there's been a lot of incongruence in the way that the organizations have been designed. So I'll use examples. I think at the point, like I was saying, when it was grow at all costs, you actually had potentially too many PMs working in a product, where it meant that there wasn't that unity of experience or thinking end to end or really understanding the full user needs and requirements. So I think there's actually an opportunity to pause and to ask yourselves, how are we designing our organizations in order to enable product managers to really own more of the experience so that feels joined up? But also going to product ops, so my last organization was running product ops, I think there's an opportunity to really just look at what are the processes that are not necessarily high value but need to be done, and how can we establish processes that enable that? And then what are the systems that need to be in place to support the collaboration that was just talked about? Because I think collaboration is really the key to driving innovation. And because potentially there's been too many people, or the systems haven't been designed properly, we actually haven't created environments that support full collaboration. So for me, when I talk about product teams, I talk about design, engineering, and product as the product team. And it's that collective team that is working to solve problems continuously. Potentially with a data scientist, maybe that's not there. So I think that's the opportunity that we really do have, is to really think about how we've done things to date and how can we drive more efficiency in it so that we can spend more time in really good discovery. We can spend more time in really understanding the insights and the data, because before we didn't have time to do the important work that enables us to really be that voice of the customer and really be able to be confident in the bets that we're making when we're going into delivery.
That fits nicely to the analogy in Jonty's speech, doesn't it, about having too many cooks, but if you don't have the narrative and the structure to understand the customer, too many cooks is just too many cooks and not enough outcome. I spend most of my time in pure tech, so it was fascinating listening to that presentation, talking about PMs, and PM in my world is a project manager. So how can companies highlight the difference between a project manager and a product manager? Because that seems to be a bit of an issue. Claire, can I start with you?
I think Frances kind of talked about it at the beginning, between shifting from project management to product management. Again, bringing this back to product ops, right? From a product operation perspective, you have process and practice, people really worrying about the underlying, the efficiency of product managers. You have portfolio management and program management, and all of this, the ecosystem that's really enabling product manager. And then you have to really think about product lines and product team to the way that you've described it. I totally agree. A product team is a wealth of people that have different skill set. We're all looking at the product, but from very, very different angles. And we have that underlying operation, whether it's design, research, or product ops, that's enabling those people to do their job accordingly and to have enough information and processes and things that have been figured out for them so that they can really focus on the product itself and delivering value to customers.
Yeah, so I guess from my side, the way I describe it, so the product side is when you're sort of on the roller coaster of uncharted territory and innovation, is where you need somebody to be an expert in their customers, their market, navigate legal and regulatory challenges. That's, if you're in that kind of environment, that's where you need a product mind, leading things, collaborating, say, bringing the relevant disciplines subject to the opportunity together. I still think I'm sure there's still a place, they're very much more outcome oriented, obviously. And then your project is more output oriented, where perhaps it's a known quantity. I'm sure there's still a place for this, where there's less room for change. Perhaps you're using a third-party platform or something to power a reporting solution, for example, where you physically can't change very much. It's still valuable, and you're still hopefully measuring the output and the outcomes at the end. But ultimately, where it's just getting the relevant people together to do their part as part of a known roadmap of things that need to happen. But I'm sure still a place for it, especially when you talk about regulatory stuff and stuff like that. But that's how I tend to describe the difference.
I always describe a product model or environment of really understanding that you're only something that's living, it's growing, it's evolving. And in that, being handed a list of items at the beginning of the year and just working towards that list does not take into consideration the fact the environment's changing, the fact that technology is evolving, the fact that customers' needs are changing. So for me, it's really, and people that work with me, I'm obsessed with product discovery. And I'm obsessed with product discovery because that is the backbone to innovation, and that's the backbone to outcomes. And what you'll see in a project environment is, again, mini waterfall. So a lot of people talk about agile, but it ends up being mini waterfall of I defined something, I defined it X number of months ago, I'm now handing it through to the different people at the different stages and hoping at the end that it's going to have an actual impact. I think the other part also that I think is a difference in a product environment is actually the richness of the conversations. And that's the challenge that I think we all as product managers or people in the team needs to really look at. Are we having the conversations that challenges our assumptions? We have a lot of bias in what we think it should be. Our goal is actually to really invalidate most of what we think is true. And if it holds true, then we're doing something of value. And I don't think a lot of people go into that mindset. While with a project type environment, it's predefined. We believe it's going to work. We know what we're going to do next. We're not actually taking in data inputs to question whether what we plan next should be what we get done or if we should pivot. We're definitely not asking ourselves, I think this is another opportunity, we ask ourselves of like, what's the definition of success? We don't ask ourselves on what are the metrics or the considerations that means we should stop doing something. Like, when should we stop? When should we roll back? When are we actually having a negative impact that's unintentional in what we're doing, and how do we define those metrics? So for me, all of that nuance is what product's about and the complexity of it. But for feature, it's like, and worked in those environments where it's, we know what we need to build for who, when, just build it. And you definitely don't need a product manager in that environment.
The one thing in all of that is that it's a change of mindset. You have to change the mindset of the organization, of the people. I came into the organization that I work for 10 years ago, and product design was non-existent. There was reason for it because we're back-end processor and didn't need to. From the moment of that to the moment that we are today, where we are front-facing customers and users all the time, changing that mindset of we have to talk, we have to be with customers, we have to think about our product that way and not from, and the underlying of project versus product is finance, right? It's like build a business case, agree on the funding and the money, and potentially the KPIs that will be the outcome. Not sure we'll actually check them in the end. We'll see. Let's go and build the product thing. It's shipped. It's gone to market. And do this again. And do this again. And it's like, this is not how we build successful product. And that's really that change in mindset going, we have to stop finance and compliance, and all of the people in the organization have to think differently about the product. And it's really a massive transformation.
And building on that, you've all talked about bringing these teams together of different skill sets who invariably all come from different business lines at various times. That's quite difficult to navigate for them. So how have you helped those colleagues navigate this change from their typical business line, be it engineering, be it data, into a product focus? Ben, can I start with you?
I think you need to understand what makes people happy. Some people prefer to be in an environment of predictability. That's not to say that can't change. Perhaps you can give them a little peek into that world and they might like it. But I think if you're fighting against that, ultimately, you might be fighting a bit of a losing battle. So I think if ultimately somebody likes to have a less certain world, they enjoy, they're curious, they want to see the measure of what they've done, and they want to then adapt to that. If they're comfortable in that environment, if they're not, you can work on it. But ultimately, sometimes I guess I've seen where it's just chalk and cheese, and it's just not something that makes them happy. And that's okay, we're all different. So I think for me, I start with that. I start with, like, who am I dealing with here? Is this somebody that's been working this way for a long time? It's working for them. They're happy with their work. Then kind of maybe that's not the best place for them, because there's many different businesses, many different markets that demand different things. You work with big initiatives where you've got big customers essentially just telling you what they want. There's a lot of regulation to get down. Sometimes that's what the business needs. They probably don't produce the best products because that's ultimately it's feature driven, it's not measured, but it's still, as long as it pays the bills, it will keep happening. So, but when there's also a need for uncertainty, and I think you just need to it's a cultural thing. It's like, does this make this person happy? And then you can kind of, you can have that and make it an environment where it's okay to fail, and then you can foster something good.
I think the navigation piece comes at multiple levels. So as a leader, I have to create the environment. So I need to do the work with the executives to understand how do they engage with the people in my team? How are we going to communicate, agree on priorities, align, do all of those pieces? I agree with Ben, there's a level of analyzing the existing team and what coaching they need to take that journey. Some people, they can easily self-learn, progress, understand it themselves with obviously a definition of we are here and this is what we need to do from a ways of working, people, process, all of those things and outlining it. Some other people need a lot more coaching. So I think as leaders, we should be comfortable to roll up our sleeves and do the coaching that's needed. I always measure willingness versus able. If the willingness is there, the able typically can happen. Sometimes it doesn't. And in that, it's then helping that individual to understand where their skills could be placed because they may not understand that themselves. But definitely it's not about making the change and just asking people to figure it out. And it's the role of the leaders to really create that cultural environment and give people enough room to succeed as well. And I think the other part also is when I've looked at new teams that haven't worked in a continuous discovery and delivery type environment, it's actually helping them to not overcomplicate things and just get some early wins. And to just kind of like help them to understand if you start doing, the act of just doing helps with the learning. So let's optimize for doing to learn, to then tackle the more complicated, challenging things later, which I think is a common struggle that PMs of all levels have because of the pressure that they get.
Yeah. Claire, anything you'd add?
Yeah, I think there's an element of transparency as well, authenticity and transparency from the leader and from the executive team. The communication that goes, if a lot of the decision of transformation and all that happens in closed doors, and then people know, we talk within the organization, we kind of guess something's up, but there's no clear line of transparency, of authenticity about what's happening, and also authenticity from the side of, I'm not going to get this right. We're probably going to have some things, and it's okay to actually fail at this. And if it doesn't work for you, you're open to come and talk to me, and we're going to make it work together. So it's really bringing people that way. And I think so, transparency, and then the other one is partnership. So finding those people within other teams that you want to partner with, and you want to show those small success. Because if you show a small success to a small team going, this is how we've done it, then you can expand and sell it further, right? So that's be the main thing.
Fantastic. And of course, as was discussed, the big change that is coming is AI. So is there excitement in your organizations and teams about the potential of AI, and how are they responding to this?
I can take this for.
Thank you, Claire.
Yes, there is excitement about this. I'm going to put my designer hat on and I've just said it before, but so AI is great, but I don't think we've looked at it from a design perspective yet. I think a lot of it's a technology-driven thing at the moment, and I don't think, for me, good design is invisible, and good AI should be absolutely invisible too. So that's the main thing for me. It's like AI it's very exciting, but all the examples that I see coming to me at the moment, all the kind of the cases that people are building, they're all about patterns that we already know in the world today, like a chatbot or things like that. And I'm like, surely this is much bigger than that. So we've had, some of the Google I/O and the OpenAI that have had to showcase what AI could do. There is, we're not far away from much, much better than that. And I think we're lacking creative thinking here. John T, I'm with you. I think we're lacking the creative thinking and the design aspect, the design thinking that needs to happen now to actually have AI being really powerful?
Yeah, I would say that we have to start experimenting with it, and it's how do you free up capacity to experiment so that you get that understanding of what its capabilities are, working with your engineering and design partners to really looking at it from different angles. But I go back to what is the problem we're trying to solve, and I don't hear enough of that conversation. So we're jumping to AI, and AI is going to have an impact. But unless we can understand the underlying problem we're solving and how that technology can effectively solve it, then I don't think we should be just implementing AI to implement AI. I think the other thing from experience of using some AI products in the past is we also need to start wearing a few additional hats that we may not have today. So ethically, what's happening? What is the quality of the underlying data and the coverage of that? Because if all of those things don't exist, it's not a reflection of AI, but it's a reflection of all the foundational parts that haven't been worked on prior to, and actually you're building bias and other issues into it. So I think there's a lot there. We just need to allocate time to experimenting and understanding it versus racing to apply AI to everything because it's a silver bullet that's going to solve our problem.
Yeah, so the point you made about what's the problem we're solving, I think our excitement is relative to the fact that everybody's trying to do their token AI thing at the moment. So I think it's measured in that regard. I think, yes, I have literally seen what you're describing. You know, we're sort of, it's perhaps not the most important customer need we're solving, but we want to get that, you know, you want to get that press release out there. So I think it's measured. There's a lot of curiosity around it. You know, the people are implementing it in their ways of working, producing content and, you know, Copilot, you know, pair programming, for example, you know, can help you code. It does feel a little bit like you're holding the AI's hand to show how to do your job. But I think to the point around like looking at the bigger picture, we're excited. I guess we're always looking at it in terms of I'm excited about how it can process data way quicker than a human ever can, and particularly when it comes to customer insight. I'm very excited about that. With one eye on the scaling cost and the dependency on that brain you've just plugged into, essentially, because we are excited, and so there's a risk of kind of getting carried away. But if you can do things that can't be done in another manner, then clearly that's very exciting, and we can accelerate what we're doing.
Conscious that people are probably needing coffee, so that falls to me to summarise. But thank you for a fantastic debate. The title's interesting, isn't it? Uncertainty is opportunity, but that's kind of what leadership is. Leadership is always trying to take people into uncertainty, but deliver opportunities both for them and for the organisation. And I think you all three you brought out some fantastic thoughts there on how to be that leader, to be a coach, to help people, give time to experiment. All easier said than done, I appreciate. But please thank my panel, Francis Ebay, Claire Bowden and Ben Hollingsworth for their fantastic contributions. Thank you. That's brilliant.